a rivalry that's unlike any other, potentially crossed multiple different professional sports between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. From kickboxing and MMA, Stylebender and Poatan may have found another path where they will meet each other for the third time after their first close technical fight and the second infamous cementing knockout victory Pereira got over Adesanya, allowing him to take over the kickboxing world, while Adesanya transitioned to take over the MMA world, and now Pereira hunting his rival down in his new territory. He did it in kickboxing twice. He's looking to also do it in MMA as well. There was a lot said about the second fight, from Pereira claiming greatness over Adesanya, and then Adesanya talking about where he was better in the fight, what was happening before the knockout. Here's the thing though, we cannot take credit away from the winner in this case. Pereira deserved every ounce of that win, because even though Adesanya says that he should have been more technical in the second fight, he actually fought technical in the first one, and he got outpointed and losing a decision. He changed things up and decided the brawl in the second fight was a lot more aggressive, and it was working. Until it didn't. Pereira simply showed to be the better kickboxer back then, beating Adesanya both technically and powerfully from the first to the second. But let's take a look at that infamous knockout, the one that people are debating a lot more about. Firstly, Alex Pereira is known to be one of the most powerful kickboxers in the world. He doesn't look like it, man, but if he touches you, he will blast you into another dimension. Adesanya is powerful, but Pereira showed a difference in the power between the two when they traded. He has the most powerful left hook we've probably ever seen in that sport, pound for pound. One of the biggest left hooks in all of combat sports. And that was the same punch that he was able to knock Adesanya out with, but how did he set it up? Was it technically set up, or was it just in the moment kind of punch? Pereira set up that left hook beautifully. He felt it out in the first round by simply throwing out a jab and faking like he's gonna throw a right hand. The way that Pereira throws his right hand is he's always loading up. There's a big telegraph, he cocks it back before he throws it, generating all the power he can to knock out anybody in the world. To catch Adesanya with a punch like that is extremely difficult. Every single time he loaded up on his right hand, he missed. And there showed to be a difference between the two punches, where Adesanya would throw his straight instead of loading up, cocking it back for all the power. He just shoots it forward from his stance, right from the shoulder, able to get to the target faster than Pereira, and that's the most important thing here. The time for the punch to reach the target is very different between the two guys when they throw their punches. Izzy is showing to be a lot quote-unquote faster because of his form, but that loading up of Pereira, faking like he's going to throw the right hand, got out the reaction from Izzy, where he rotates his body perpendicular sideways to Alex Pereira, making the target a lot smaller, and he also extends his lead hand so he can naturally block the punch or deflect it using his arm and shoulder while it's in the way. When you extend your lead arm forward like this, your opponent is going to have to really reach around and get it a lot closer in order to land the punch, which Pereira downloaded. He downloaded that data and tried it again in the next round. This time actually throwing the right hand, knowing that Izzy is going to, again, rotate his body, making the target smaller, and extend his lead arm to block the punch. Pereira, knowing that this was going to happen, he extends his combination. The right overhand that bounces off the shoulder, gets blocked by Izzy successfully, turns into a left hook. But Izzy was again able to block this punch, putting up a tight right guard. Pereira yet again downloads the data and uses it for the finishing blow. The issue that he saw here was, number one, they're in the same stance, orthodox versus orthodox. Usually when the fighters are mirroring their stances, it can make the fight a lot closer in proximity, right? They're a lot closer to each other because there's more space for the lead foot to move forward. Whereas if they're in the opposite stance, notice how the lead feet are in front of each other. And this makes more of a battle between the power hand, and instinctively against each other's power hand, they want to create a little bit more distance so they can gauge it a lot better, as well as fight for the outside foot. Notice when Pereira steps forward in both of these positions. When they're both in the same orthodox stance, he's able to step forward and get closer to Adesanya because of that space that he has for his lead foot. When they're in opposite stances, he didn't really have this kind of distance. And that was perfect for him because the first time he got too close and the left hand went behind the guard. So more distance so his left hook can fit in front of Adesanya's guard. That was the number one thing he found. The other thing that the opposite stances does here is when Alex Pereira is throwing the right overhand, Izzy cannot extend his lead jab in order to stuff in and block the punch. This time he's going to have to either put up a guard or he's going to shoot down the left straight. He potentially was trying to catch Pereira with that left straight, but by extending his left arm and getting hit by Pereira's right overhand, it caused his whole body to shift the other way. Look at the angle of Izzy's body. He's angling off completely to the other side, extending his left shoulder, not allowing himself to get on time to block the left hook. This is massive. Notice where the guard is as Pereira lands the left hook. It wasn't able to get there in time because of the rotation from the overhand connecting on the shoulder, rotating Izzy too much. The other big difference here was Pereira put way too much power in his right overhand the first time he threw it. Notice how hard he hits Izzy's shoulder and knocks Izzy off balance a bit. That's a lot of power he threw into the punch. He doesn't need that if he's looking for the left hook. The second time, he just touches Izzy's shoulder and then right away goes into the left hook. This not only makes the combo faster, but also allows him to get off the angle that he wants to fit in that left hook a lot better. Because when you throw a lot of power in your right overhand, you're leaning into it. When you're leaning into your right overhand, but you're really looking to angle off for your left hook for the finishing blow, you're not able to angle off sharply the way he did for the finish. Pereira was able to fit in that left hook and knocks out Adesanya clean, man. Beautiful combination that was set up throughout the fight. So it wasn't just a punch in the moment. This was some intelligent work by Alex Pereira. But so were some other moments here. For an example, starting off the fight, Pereira was conditioning Izzy's guard. They're in the opposite stance. Pereira has Izzy on the back foot, and he starts hand fighting with the lead. His lead hand against Adesanya's, but every time he touched it, it was a trigger for him to attack with his kick. First, he attempts to intercept Izzy's left movement. Notice how he's moving to his left side with the head kick, and then uses the same setup to attack the legs instead. Notice how he touches the lead hand again as Izzy extends forward, and this time attacks low, but notice how Izzy thought it was going to go to his head again. He guards up high and leans away, exposing his leg, and at the same time, Pereira attacks above the shin, above the knee, just in case. This pressure builds on up until Izzy starts to get more aggressive, but before that, in another moment, Pereira gets Izzy off balance simply by being more aggressive and putting more pressure on him. And as he gets caught up, notice how Izzy's legs, his feet, are linear. They're on a straight line in front of each other, without Izzy's body being sideways. This is a very unbalanced position that he's in, and he needs to move out of it or he'll be in huge trouble. Pereira knows that Izzy cannot check high with his stance. So instead of looking for another knockout blow, he intelligently aims at the legs instead, above the knee. Izzy tries to catch it, knowing his mistake. He didn't try to check it. He tried to catch it instead. In order to get himself out of this, away from this pressure, Izzy retaliates with a setup off of his left post so he can extend forward, measure, push Poatan away from him a little bit, align Pereira in his sights. Pereira is intelligent. He rotates his shoulders to match Izzy's. He mirrors Izzy's post, does the same thing to him as they're both the same height and have the same reach, right? This is the only way it's going to work. Either you're as long as Izzy or longer. So by mirroring Izzy's post, he is filling in and blocking the path of Izzy's right hand. Look at the kind of roadblock they made on each other on the center. That straight line for each other's right hand is so difficult to get through. They cause so much traffic in the center. Izzy was the one that was aggressive, so he had to attack another way. And Pereira knew this, man. He knew that the kick was the only way that Izzy was going to get at him. He slides away, keeping his stance the whole way through. And as the pressure carries on because Pereira was able to get away from that kick, Pereira fakes the right to line up his signature left hook. Right, so he paws out with his right hand as a fake, making it a bait to distract Adesanya, but here's where he kind of made the mistake. Izzy was already extending forward with his right hand. The right hand against the same stance fighter, they're both orthodox, is meant to parry a jab. Right, that means his focus is more on Pereira's left hand than the right. So the right hand did not distract Adesanya whatsoever. He saw the telegraph of the left hook and leaned away from it. We've seen this similar kind of thing happen to Adesanya before with Paulo Costa and Robert Whittaker. Right, he was able to lean away from some big punch they threw, whether it be an overhand or a left hook or whatever it is. He leans away from the punch and counters them with his hooks. It looked like he tried to do the same exact thing, but the difference here was, fortunately for Pereira, he accidentally hit Adesanya's hand before he was able to throw it. Pereira intelligently clinches up with him, but on Adesanya's part, being so crafty in the ring, he actually did this twice in the fight, he is able to rotate Pereira around and get Pereira closer to the ropes before the ref breaks it up. The ref pushes the fighters away. Before that happens, Adesanya wants to make sure that he's the one pushed away to the center while Pereira is pushed to the ropes. This is very sneaky from Adesanya. He did twice in the fight to get the positional advantage. And it also showed that Adesanya did not want to be close to the ropes. He did not want to be backed up by Pereira. Usually in fights, he's not really bothered by that. He's comfortable on the back foot. But against someone like Pereira, it's a little bit different. He understands that kind of power. He understands that he can't play Pereira like he did other fighters. Another thing that showed that he did not want to get pressured by Pereira at all was the fact that he started brawling with him and being more aggressive, and once that started, he was not backed up to the ropes as easily as he was before. But before we talk about the brawling, Pereira still showed a few interesting things up until that, because when the brawling started to happen, Pereira was losing control of the fight. For an example, he was able to counter so many of Adesanya's jabs using low kicks, one of the natural counters to a front stab jab from the same stance fighter. And just like Adesanya foreshadowed what he did in the future, using a similar kind of defense so he could set up his potential shot, Alex Pereira did the same thing, man. Foreshadowed his big knockout victory before he went into the UFC. Right high kick, left hook combination. He tried it, but Izzy actually stood up tall and the punch ultimately missed his chin and went right under him. It's hard to know if Izzy actually meant to do that because usually fighters don't defend punches like that. The only guy we've ever seen actually do this before was Tony Ferguson. That could have been a devastating blow. He got the same thing in the future when he knocked out Thomas Powell. And that's when Izzy gets extremely aggressive. He starts to change the whole way he was fighting and started it all off by throwing a flying knee. Now, instead of allowing Pereira to lead the dance by punching first, Adesanya was the one that started to lead, throwing in 1-2s, right hands, brawling it out, and specifically foreshadowed something else that he used against Robert Whittaker in his very last fight, extending a jab but then chopping down on Pereira's shoulder so he can align his right hand a lot better. And the way Adesanya got his biggest shots in there was by simply pulling down on Alex Pereira's lead arm. Pereira would try to keep distance away, extend forward with his lead hand, and Adesanya would be able to deflect it, even hold it down sometimes, and began raining down right hands, man, bombing on Pereira multiple times in the fight, and even got the ref to get in there for a standing count. This is not the most technical thing to do, but it was extremely effective for Adesanya to get his punches in there where he couldn't do it before. And Pereira showed an insane chin. We know this guy could take a shot because he took so many from Adesanya, even took a head kick and didn't go down from it. But the thing was, you can't be too reckless because we do know that Alex Pereira is extremely powerful, and he was able to land some left hooks on Adesanya coming in that wobbled him. Not only did Pereira get wobbled before the end of the fight, Adesanya did too, man. Adesanya got on weak legs at one point. Another time he stumbled backwards from the punch. And one time, learning from what Adesanya was doing, he was able to bob and weave under the extension of that right hand so he can extend his left hook on Adesanya's chin, kind of like Mike Tyson, and they quickly got the respect from each other. For an example, I mean, these right hands from Adesanya got Pereira to always guard up whenever he saw it, which made it easy for Adesanya to land to the body with the right hand. Guarding up is going to expose the body. And this went kind of vice versa. Whenever Pereira was going to throw a left hook, Adesanya always guarded high, exposing the body. But here's the thing with Adesanya, man. He knew that left hook was like all Pereira had to him. When Adesanya was being aggressive, Pereira was always looking to land the left hook. So even moments, it's actually kind of funny to watch, Adesanya would just step forward with his hands down and wait for the left hook to go through. Right, he knew Pereira would throw the left hook, so he would just step forward, wait for the left hook, it goes right past his face, and then he would attack him with the right hand. And that ultimately led up to the end of the fight that Pereira, even under all of that pressure, all of that punishment, even got a standing count against him, he was still able to set up that knockout blow from the first and second round and executed it on the third. This was an excellent fight, man. Early in the fight, Pereira was having a lot of success. Even inside of exchanges, he was able to stun Adesanya. Adesanya clearly was getting the better of him in these brawling exchanges, and then the knockout came. Again, people are going to say Adesanya brawled too much, but then again, he was a lot more technical in the first one and lost a technical fight. He tried to brawl it out with Pereira and lost due to the power. Alex Pereira is a legend in kickboxing, and he showed it then. Adesanya, great kickboxer in his own right, but looks to be a lot better as an MMA fighter, and hopefully one day, man, we get to see these two fight each other yet again.